Morning, good evening. Welcome to the Charlotte Area SharePoint User Group March 2023 meeting or meetup. My name's Andy, and I want to welcome you to our user group. We typically meet third or fourth Thursday of the month here online, but hopefully we'll be going back to a hybrid model here in the near future. So we are the Charlotte Area SharePoint User Group based out of Charlotte, North Carolina, but through the magic of technology, we are seeing more of a worldwide audience. We have people joining in with us from all over the place here live in our monthly meetings, but also through our communities as well as our YouTube channel. So where can you find us? Well, Meetup's the best place to find us and interact with us. ksig.org is where you'll find us. That redirects to our meetup page. Join in there, and you can see all of the upcoming events that we have. You can engage in conversation. You can network within that community as well. Now, we have a number of other channels available for people to interact with us. We've got our Twitter handle that is very active. A number of the organizers have notifications set up on that, so we try to respond fairly quickly and engage with our audience there. We have a Facebook page as well as a LinkedIn page and a LinkedIn group set up. And we do have a Yammer community, external Yammer community, but it looks like we're going to be sunsetting that here in the next little bit as Yammer continues to evolve. It's now going to become Viva Engage, and it's a little bit more for the business side of things. So we're kind of phasing that one out. But join us at meetup at ksig.org. Now, couple of places where you can find us outside of that. We've got a YouTube channel. Make it really easy for you to engage with us. Our YouTube channel is bit.ly/KSIGYT. That YouTube channel is growing. We've got a pretty solid audience there. We see the subscription rate going up and up and up every single month. We do record our meetings, so if you miss a meeting, you can go and you can catch up with it on our YouTube channel. Feel free to ask questions in the comments, hit the subscribe button while you're there. We're pretty active and engaged in our YouTube community. Speaking of YouTube communities, a number of our members have some thriving communities. For example, Daniel Christian has an amazing YouTube community. He's got tens of thousands of users out there, which is pretty awesome. He releases a new video every single Monday. So be sure to subscribe to Daniel's channel. There's a quick little QR code to visit that. I have a channel as well, QR code to visit that. I do not have nearly the membership that Daniel has. He's been doing it for a lot longer than me, but come stop by, say hello, hit the subscribe button while you're there. We have some other team members that have some YouTube communities as well. We advertise those on our Meetup site. And if you have one and you want to share it with us, send it to me here in the chat in Microsoft Teams. Find me on Meetup, find me on Twitter, send me a link to it, and we'll make sure we give you a shout out to your community, and we'll try to drive some of our audience there. So with that, we have a really exciting topic today. I don't want to take a whole lot of time. I want to make sure we give Geoff a whole lot of time to go over everything he has to discuss here today. But it is a really exciting time here in the Microsoft world. Microsoft has a huge investment in a product called OpenAI. And when I say huge, I mean to the tune of billions of dollars. And that's billions with a B, a capital B. And there are a lot of zeros behind that. But Microsoft has been working with OpenAI for a while now, and they are starting to introduce more AI-driven technologies into the Microsoft apps and services that they offer. Now, some of the announcements that Microsoft has made recently, one of the bigger ones is the new Bing powered by OpenAI. It brings a chat-based natural language interaction to the search experience. So you can go into the new Bing and you could say something like, I need help with PowerShell commandlets for Microsoft team meeting policies. And it will search and find reference material for that and present it back to you in a conversational way, including links to the resources that it pulled. And if you need help, maybe troubleshooting that commandlet or getting started with it, it can expand on the commandlet itself, how to use it, the parameters, and you can ask follow-up questions and engage the new Bing in a conversation to dive deeper into that topic. That is a revolutionary way to use search, and it's powered by OpenAI and GPT-4 on the back end. So that's another announcement. OpenAI recently updated their model, their large language model, to GPT-4. Microsoft announced that the new Bing is powered by GPT-4, which means you can have large queries, you can have really intelligent conversations with these tools, and you can really further your learning and your research and even use it as a personal assistant. But it doesn't stop there. Microsoft has announced that they are including these technologies in a lot of other apps. For example, Dynamics 365 has integration with OpenAI for the Biz Apps platform. We're seeing more and more of this in things like Power Apps and Power Automate. For example, in Power Automate, I can go to the Power Automate home screen, and in natural language, I can say what I want to do. For example, I have this data and I want to do X, Y, and Z and notify this person with it. And it will help me to map out a Power Automate flow to automate that business process. If I'm working in Power Apps and I am struggling with an expression to make a button or a control in my app function the way that I want, I can use Power FX in the expression editor. And some of that is also powered by OpenAI and their technology. So Microsoft's made some recent announcements about the Dynamics integration. And here today, March 16th, 2023, just an hour before we kicked off this presentation, Microsoft introduced Microsoft Copilot. Copilot is going to work inside of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, Outlook, and Microsoft Teams. Think of it like a personal assistant in a sidebar when you're getting ready to create content. For example, I can have it help me to generate ideas and kickstart a Word document. I can go into PowerPoint and say, hey, use the draft from this proposal that I have in Word to generate a PowerPoint presentation. And powered by OpenAI and GPT-4, it can start drafting a PowerPoint presentation, including a design, look, and feel for that presentation. I can't in 3 minutes give you everything that announcement that we just saw has, but we'll follow up with some material around that here in the very near future. Needless to say, the future of AI in the Microsoft world is incredibly exciting, and we are really excited to have someone here to speak with us about this, Mr. Geoff Abels from C5 Insight. So I'd like to welcome Geoff, and I'm going to turn things over now to Geoff to give him as much time as possible to talk about artificial intelligence. Is the AI future really here? Thanks for being here, Geoff.
All right. Thank you for having me, Andy. I think after that awesome introduction, there might not be much left for me to say, but I'm going to do the best that I can here. Let's see. Let me just arrange my screen real quickly. And, you know, I'm not quite sure what to say. So let me start here with my good buddy. So welcome to our enlightening webinar, where we'll explore the fascinating world of ChatGPT, the cutting-edge AI language model transforming human-computer interaction. Prepare to dive into its capabilities, applications, and the potential impact on society as we continue to harness the power of artificial intelligence. I hope everyone could see my screen, because I definitely missed the moment if you weren't seeing what I was doing there. But you're going to see that this is actually a new subject, at least the ChatGPT part of it, and it's become very big, very fast. So I'm going to go quick because there's a lot of stuff to cover. That's very exciting, and some of it is new as this week. In fact, as Andy said, a couple of really, really big announcements made just this week. So trying to stay on top of all this is challenging. So let's start with this. Just a quick definition. What is generative AI, right? That's what ChatGPT is. It's a type of artificial intelligence or a type of machine learning called generative AI. And the definition for that is it's an AI system that uses algorithms to generate original content, such as text or images. All right, so great. What does that practically mean to us? You just saw one quick practical application, right? I had it right in my introduction to this webinar in real time. Let's look at another practical application, going beyond just ChatGPT. Everything you see on the slide was created by generative AI. The background for the slide, I used a generative AI called Midjourney. The prompt I gave it was, give me a computer wallpaper background of 4-leaf clovers. It gave me several options. I like that one. I wanted little robots in the picture. So I went to Midjourney and I said, give me a robot typing on a 1950s manual typewriter in an office. It gave me 4 images to choose from. I let it use all 4 in this case. I went to another generative AI called Jasper, which is similar to ChatGPT. And I said, give me a 15-word definition for generative AI. And it gave me the definition that I read out to you all. You'll see in a lot of my other slides in this session, a lot of other examples of generative AI. I'm not going to read the prompts off to you, but I'm leaving them on the slides because I want you to understand how powerful this is for generating things. I can tell you this individually. I started playing with this back in November. I actually stumbled into Jasper because we're rebuilding our website, and it started helping me with that. Soon thereafter, I stumbled into ChatGPT, and it went from kind of a novelty to something helpful for our website to something literally I use just about every single day to get my work done now. And with all the new things it's getting integrated into, I'm going to be using it more and more. So quick intro for those of you who don't know me. My name is Geoff Abels. I run a company or co-run a company with a lot of smart other people called C5 Insight. We're really virtual, so I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, but our team is all over the place. I geek out on this stuff, meaning I'm a bit of a workaholic because I have a lot of interest and passion in my work. So I've written some books on the topics and that kind of stuff. As a practice, we focus on customer and employee engagement. Practically speaking, from a technology standpoint, that means we're a Microsoft shop and we help companies get the most out of the Dynamics 365 application suite and the Microsoft 365 application suite. And of course, the Power Platform being the connective tissue that brings all of those things together. And on the who am I really and why do I do all this stuff side, there's my family. My wife and I are empty nesters. Our second grandbaby arrived kind of recently. So that's a pretty recent picture of our grandson and granddaughter. We love being empty nesters. We love riding a motorcycle together. We love experiencing fine spirits together. We love our little empty nest housemate there, Verdi, who's a little bit bigger than she was in that picture when we first took it a few years ago. Okay, so Andy used the term large language models, and that's really what ChatGPT is. If any of you are as old as I am, you might remember something way back at the dawn of all this called Eliza. And Eliza was this conversational cutting edge thing that was available on Radio Shack TRS-80 machines. So just, black and white screens and all that stuff, but you could type something in and Eliza would type something back to you and all that. And it seemed totally cutting edge. This is back in the 80s. Here we are now. What's the difference? Well, now it's not just a small language model like Eliza, it's a large language model that can do all sorts of things because it has much more robust algorithms behind it, much more computing power behind it, and a huge, huge, huge library of information that comes from the internet, but also that comes from whatever you happen to be working on, including your intranet. So I'm not going to focus too much on how it does what it does. I'm not going to focus too much on the goods and bads and all that. What I want to do today is mostly give you some real world examples and some practical things you can do maybe to get started. So if you're already using it, cool. And if you're just getting into it and you want to learn more, great. And if you're kind of like, hey, I've heard all about this, but I'm just trying to figure out what it's all about, great. We're going to touch on all of those things. I'm also going to stop a few times to get a little bit of input. So I wanted to throw this out there and say, if you would want to, in the next couple of minutes, we can't dwell on these slides much because there's a lot to share, but I'd love to hear what you're doing because I'm not the only one doing stuff with this. And there's probably some other folks who have something to share. So if you're doing something with ChatGPT or any other generative AI, unmute your mic and speak up or put it into chat. I'm going to shut up for at least 30 seconds and give people a chance to talk if they'd like to share.
Well, Geoff, I'm not using it a lot, but I am using it to comment out a lot of code when I'm writing Power Apps so that if somebody else has to pick up something I did, then they've got at least an explanation of what I did.
Thank you, Brian. That's tremendous. And thank you for volunteering that. And that's an awesome usage for it. I'm going to touch on that in one of these slides too, something people don't often think about, but take your code, paste it in and say, hey, add comments. And it's better at adding comments than most of us humans are. Great example. I see some other here, PowerShell commandlets for Microsoft 365 apps and services. Just started it to help me studying for the DSA, useful for refactoring SQL queries, building an intelligent knowledge base. Thank you, everybody. The list goes on and on. So if you're thinking, hey, I haven't done any of this stuff yet, we're going to get into almost all of these, or at least things close to these as we get a little deeper into it. So here's my agenda for the remainder. I've got about 1 more hour left with you today. So we're going to talk about real life scenarios, things that we're doing, things that I'm doing, things we're seeing some of our clients do that you can reapply. And this is a broad range of things. Keep the ideas coming, by the way. I see them in there. We're going to talk a little bit about what could go wrong. I have a different perspective on that I want to share. But of course, there's a lot of theorists out there saying, maybe this isn't such a good thing, or maybe this is doing some bad things we need to be thinking about. And so I want to have a little pause to think about that as we get into it. Then in a very short section, I want to open it up to start imagining together what this might do in the future. And really, I'm going to ask you guys to unmute your mics again there too. So as you look at this and think about this, start thinking about what might this look like in a year or 2 or 5 years, right? A lot of people, myself included, are excited about this because I really do believe this is like the mobile phone was. This is like the internet was, right? This is an inflection point where how we're doing work and how we're doing a lot of life is going to be significantly altered by this. And I think it's going to be ultimately better. There's always the risk with new innovation of it being worse. But what I want to do is focus on the positive when we imagine the future and say, what might this be doing to make our lives better in 3, 5, 10 years? So I want your input on that too. I've really not done a lot of thinking on it. I'm just trying to keep up with it these days. And then I'll close by giving you just a few next steps, some links, some things to try on your own. So if you're just getting into this, you'll have something you can work on. Okay, real life scenarios. And again, you can kind of see there's a little prompt there from something called DALL-E, which is another OpenAI initiative, which instead of generating text, it generates art. And you can see there's a prompt I used to generate that little piece of artwork. Okay, to start this section of the session, I want to introduce you to somebody who's become really, really important at C5 Insight. So meet Allie Jameson. Now, the thing about Allie Jameson is she's actually not a real person. And I know she's not a real person because we created Allie Jameson at a website called thispersondoesnotexist.com. This is a generative AI that's been around for many, many years. If you go to that URL right now, it'll give you a picture of someone that doesn't exist, right? It gets composites of lots and lots of people. And every time you reload that website, it gives you another unique image. At C5 Insight, we wanted someone to kind of be our spokesperson, our virtual marketing director. And so we decide on the name of this person because we do a lot with this idea of luck. So we kind of like, okay, sort of this Irish sounding name would kind of be cool mojo to go along with that. And so we kind of kept hitting refresh and we're like, hey, I like that Allie. That's our Allie Jameson. I could never recreate her. If I go back to that site and hit refresh 10,000 times, probably wouldn't see another face that looks like that one. She's unique. So generative AI, really simple way to get started. Go to thispersondoesnotexist.com and introduce yourself to somebody who's totally unique and doesn't exist. Now, I introduced you to Allie Jameson because Allie generates a lot of content for us. One thing we do every year at C5 Insight is we send out a St. Patrick's Day gift to kind of the friends of C5 Insight and our current clients at C5 Insight and that kind of thing. And so this year, here's the gift we sent out. I've actually got one sitting on my desktop right now. It's a coffee mug warmer. So you set your coffee mug on it, keeps your coffee warm for you until you're done drinking your coffee. Mm-hmm. So we love sending these out. We're super excited about what we did this year. Next year, we've already got our gift and it's paid for and sitting in our storage facility ready to ship because it's such an awesome gift. So when we did it this year, we thought, hey, we're all learning a lot more about AI. By the way, I'm getting a little background noise from somebody. If you wouldn't mind muting your mic if you're on, I think it's maybe Saba, if I'm saying that name correctly, getting a little background noise there. So we said, you know what, we want to do something different with our gifts this year. Since we're all working with AI now, let's have Allie write our St. Patrick's Day limerick. So every year we kind of do a limerick or a blessing with this. So you can kind of see in this case, we used ChatGPT to write this limerick. And you can kind of see this wasn't just a question for ChatGPT. This was a conversation. We said, hey, write an Irish blessing about the acronym LUCK. Listen, understand, connect, and know. LUCK is something that we do as our kind of foundational principle at C5 Insight. And we looked at it, we're like, well, that's kind of cool. We're like, oh, you know what? We're giving away a coffee thing. So say something about coffee, add that to the blessing. And then we were like, hey, we want to lead our clients, right? We want to tell them what's going on here. So tell everybody that AI wrote this. And what we ultimately wound up with was an AI wrote this with words so true, May luck be with you, always in sight. Listen, understand, connect, and know what's right. Warm coffee by your side to start your day. With luck as your guide, you'll find your way. Now, in the past, when we wrote those limericks or those blessings or rhymes, we would spend hours doing it. Everyone would come up with their own idea. We'd go back and forth. This was a quick conversation, no more than about 15 minutes that we sat collectively and generated this in ChatGPT. Now, we also wanted a nice picture. The background for this segment of the slides was generated, as you saw, with DALL-E, so we could put that in here as well. The rest of this is kind of boilerplate, something that we just typed up, but a great external communication for us. Now, I put this out there because part of what I do, I speak at events like this all the time, but some of my audience are people who are mostly communicators, internal and external. Some people are more people who are more technical, and it's revolutioning all of our worlds across all of these different job functions. So external communications was one. Now, another external communication was I'm actually working on doing a lot of future sessions. And so this is actually a screen clip of Jasper. So I was working on some session proposals for some sessions that we're all doing as a team together soon. And I gave it something and said, look, here's a description of what I know I want to do. Give me 10 clever options for titles for a seminar. It gave me a list of 10 right away. Another use of Jasper is, I mentioned, we're rebuilding our website. You can see this is one of the menus on our website. If I kind of hover over this, we're going to have an area called technologies. And we wanted to have one page for each of the technologies we support. So when people visit, they'll kind of quickly get a menu of, oh, wow, they do all these different things. But that's a problem because then you have to generate content for all of those, 30 or 50 pages. Well, welcome Jasper. Jasper helped us generate all of that content. Now, we also had something happen recently where one of our solution architects was engaged with a client, and the client was trying to decide, should I, when I migrate my Microsoft Dynamics 365 CRM to the cloud, should I start from scratch and rebuild all the customizations, or should I try to migrate everything, including the customizations, over? And he wound up being on 2 or 3 of those projects, and he just sent an internal communication around, hey, gang, just so you know, here's kind of the pros and cons I'm running into. So as we talk to people about this, we have better knowledge that we can share with everyone. Well, we took a look at that and said, this is great information to share externally, but it wasn't really well formatted to share externally. It needed to be cleaned up, right? It was bullet points and not complete sentences, perfect for internal communication, not so perfect for a blog. So we just took it, plugged it into ChatGPT and said, hey, rewrite this as a blog that can be shared externally. And in a few minutes of back and forth, like maybe 5 or 10 at the most, we had a blog that would have typically taken probably a couple of hours to try to have a human put that together for us. Now, internal communications is very similar. One of our clients, who is an internal communications director in a company of about 1,000 people, and he'd come from much larger companies before that, was always struggling because he had a lot of goals for his internal communication team, but they could never get a large enough team to do it all. Now, what this person said is, now that I'm using generative AI, our 3-person internal communication team has the output in terms of both quality and quantity that we would have had if we were an 8-person team just a few years ago. So in their case, it's not about downsizing. It's about being able to say, we can do more with the people we already have, right? Not more with less, but we can actually do more with the team we already have to make this company a better place to work and to communicate better with each other. Now, we've used it also ourselves. So internally, I wrote a little kind of a tongue-in-cheek article for our own little news share, our intranet that we call the Lion's Den. And I kind of said, why visit the Lion's Den homepage? And I used ChatGPT to quickly put that in there to give everybody some reasons as to, hey, why is it important to be on our homepage? I was also asked to write an article on ChatGPT, by the way, for a magazine, an online magazine called Smart Customer Service. How did I write it? I used ChatGPT to write it. Now, I don't want to say it was as simple as write an article on this topic. Like I did with the other communications you saw, it was a conversation, right? I said, okay, I want to cover these 4 points. So here's these 4 points. Give me a paragraph on each. Now clean this one up. Let me pull it out. Let me rewrite it and proofread it and put it back in. Let me ask it to clarify this. But still, that entire process, it could have been a half day for an article of that magnitude, was probably somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour for me to crank something like that out. Personal communications. So if you're sending emails, letters, poems, and toasts, this is an awesome way to do this. Just for fun, as I was putting the content together for today, I went out and searched for a poorly written email, right? We have them all the time. Either they're poorly written because they don't communicate well, or maybe they're poorly written because it's a moment of passion and we hit that send button when we're still feeling angry about something and now it's too late. So I grabbed the sample email and I went to ChatGPT and said, hey, rewrite this email to make it more understandable and more respectful in a professional tone. And I took this one here. I won't read it all for you. And it put this out here, much more clear communication, better worded, still gets the entire meaning across, but in a way that's more acceptable and more likely to get a response from you. Just this morning, by the way, I had met somebody about a month ago in San Francisco when I was leading a training event, and it was a group of 3 people from Saudi Arabia. And I wanted to follow up with them this morning, and it struck me that, I don't know the cultural ways to communicate, right? If I communicate in my Southeastern USA way of communicating, maybe that won't be received well. So I typed my email and I said, hey, ChatGPT, can you rephrase this email in a way that would be respectful to a Saudi Arabian business executive? And it really changed it significantly, not the meaning, but the way I was approaching the other human being to make it something that was easier for them to deal with. Another one that we've had in our own neighborhood is some issues with certain neighbors that have been difficult to deal with, right? So a lot of people were sending ugly things or putting things in front of them that weren't necessarily helpful. So just for fun, this isn't the real life example, but I went into Jasper and said basically, hey, write a letter to a bothersome neighbor, but in a way that might actually help change behavior. So Jasper took all of this input and all of this input and output this letter for me. Okay, so that's just writing, right? That's just basic communication. Now let's get into some coding situations. So here is a situation, real life situation. We have an automated SharePoint and Teams governance portal that we set up for our clients. And in a recent design change for one client, our developer who works on this asked me if I could find a partner that could help them with HTML design, because they kind of put together the message that needed to be displayed, but they're like, look, I'm not a designer. Maybe someone could help me with creating a better design for this so it looks more aesthetically pleasing. So the developer sent me the code. Now, I'm not a designer, but in the past, I would have said, okay, let me find the right person on our team or a contractor to help with this. But instead I said, well, let me give this a try. Let me take the HTML code here to ChatGPT, and here's the prompt. I said, update this HTML to make it more aesthetically pleasing. It cranked out a bunch of new HTML for me. I pasted in the HTML, of course. It gave me the result, and I said, you know what? I don't like the result. And by the way, I tested this because it was very easy for me to copy the HTML into a local editor, save it, and then just open it up with my browser. I'm not a developer, so I could do that easily. I said, hey, refine it. And with the same blue shading on the bottom area where it says powered by C5 Insight as on the top, because it wasn't quite the same. Gave me something else. But one thing to know, on long answers, ChatGPT times out. ChatGPT 3.5 can only provide answers so long before it just says I quit. ChatGPT 4 is giving longer answers now. So this is one thing. If you're using GPT-3, the free version, you might frequently need to do this. And don't say start over, because it'll time out again. Instead say, can you please complete your answer? And it will complete the answer. So I had to do that a few times during the course of this. Then I also said, after I sent this over to our developer, I had to go back because the developer said, oh, you know what, this looks great, but the problem is this is being embedded into an email that has header elements that don't look so great inside the email. Can you help me to, can you help clean it up a little bit more? So I took it back and said, update it to not use header elements so it looked better when sent in the body of an email. This is the whole conversation, right? No development involved at all, not me messing with the HTML other than copying and pasting it. Here's the output that I have after doing that entire process, right? And it probably would have been fewer steps if I were the developer doing it myself, right? And I sent it all back to the developer so that person could know how to do it too, but I wanted to experiment with it myself. So writing complete HTML code, right? Without being a coder whatsoever. Now, another thing that I experimented with was something just for the sake of playing around with it. I said, you know what? A lot of times when you create teams in Microsoft Teams, it creates a group. Not a lot of times, it always creates a group. And depending on your settings, it might create an Office 365 group that appears in Outlook, which could be confusing for people. and you might want to turn those off. So you can't turn those off just by going to a settings area, unless Microsoft's changed it recently that I'm not aware of. So I said, you know what? Hey, ChatGPT, write a PowerShell script for me to turn off Outlook groups for Microsoft Team. Bang, it pasted that for me. Now I looked at that and said, oh, that's really cool. Now, so you guys know, by the way, I've not tested this code, and ChatGPT isn't always right, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but it's probably directionally correct, right? So then I looked at it and said, yeah, but you know what? I'm not a PowerShell guy. Like, I don't really know how do I actually go into PowerShell and run this? So I said, hey, ChatGPT, can you explain exactly how to install, start, and use PowerShell to run the above script? See, one of the things about ChatGPT is it remembers the context of the conversation. So it says, here's what you asked me first. Here's my last answer. Now you're asking me something else. And it said, sure, here's exactly what you do to go through and do that. So I did this because as I was experimenting with it, we wrote a blog about this maybe 4 years ago. And I remember spending a significant amount of time researching, and testing to come up with the blog. Now with 2 ChatGPT prompts, I've created a complete solution. I'd need to go test it before I post it. We haven't posted this yet, but it's something that's very easy to do. Other coding. So while doing some other little things lately, I use some other generative AI. You can see the first one, I kind of said, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to just get that one line of code, right? I'm not a developer, but I am a low coder, right? I can get in and do a little bit with JavaScript. And I needed to remember how to get in to do something in Dynamics that I hadn't done for a while. Hey, in JavaScript, how do I get the ID of the current record in Dynamics 365 CRM? Bang, it gives me the answer. Now, this is something we'll come back to in a little while because ChatGPT itself is only trained on information up to the year 2021. So Microsoft has changed the API since then. So that code is not technically correct. It probably still works, but it will soon be deprecated. So you need to test things and be aware of what's going on before you just blindly trust what it says. Now, I wanted to give you another example of this. So I went into Bing and used Bing's version of ChatGPT and asked essentially the same question. Using JavaScript, how do I get the ID of current record in Dynamics 365 CRM? It gave me the standard search results, but then next to that, it builds this out and says, hey, here's how you do it. Here's the code to do it. Now, the cool thing about Bing is it is giving you the source it got this information from. So I can just look at this and try to use it directly in context, or I can click on any of the sources it used to put that answer together to dig in and do a little more research to find out maybe some other information I need to find out. And then again, over here in ChatGPT, I said, hey, look, I'm working on a Canvas Power App. How do I set up a button on a form to do something specific? Now, some of this kind of stuff, as was mentioned earlier, is even being built into Power Apps now. But I found that sometimes it's even helpful for me to pop over here and ask ChatGPT some questions that maybe are a little more verbose and long form than the other ones. So code documentation, somebody mentioned. So here, I just went out and grabbed a couple of things just for fun to show you how this works. This is not actual code. But I said, okay, please rewrite this code with embedded comments that make it easier to understand. And I just pasted this code I found online. And you could see if I looked at this code, for me, I would look at this and say, I have no idea what this guy's even trying to do with this code. Now I have nice embedded comments directly inside of my code. In fact, it almost makes me wonder when I look at something like this, do I even need to put comments in my code anymore? Because it will be so easy to just submit it to a computer to say, explain this code to me before I go in and edit it. But either way, it's easy to do this. I also went over to Bing and said, give me an example of a large amount of JavaScript code. It gave me this. I don't know if you'd call this large or not, but it gave me this little code segment. And then I took that back into ChatGPT and I said, hey, write an explanation of this code. So not just comments, but explain how the code works to me. And it broke the code down into 3 little segments, and it gave me little descriptions above each segment so I could understand exactly what's going on. Now, as a low code, no code guy, what I love about this is sometimes I might have to go in and understand what someone else has done so I can change just that 1 or 2 lines of code. And that's not beyond my capabilities. But if I look at this code, I'm probably not going to have any idea what to do. If I look at this code or this code, I might have an idea of that 1 or 2 lines I need to go find to do something with it. And of course, if I were a professional coder, that would take it even further. Now, I've been talking about some things beyond ChatGPT already, but let's kind of talk about a few of the other things in a little more detail that we heard up front. First of all, integrated ChatGPT into things like Bing means the model is integrated. It does not mean the database is integrated. So although ChatGPT, one of its weaknesses right now is it's trained on the internet as it existed in 2021. And that doesn't necessarily mean the entirety of the internet, but a lot of data got fed to it from the internet, and that stopped at 2021. In fact, I even went into ChatGPT 4 when it came out earlier this week, and I said, hey, tell me what's new in ChatGPT 4. And it said, I can't because my data's from 2021. I don't know anything about myself to tell you about myself, right? So that's how ChatGPT works. But when others say, oh, we're using ChatGPT, they're not using the database. They're just using the algorithm. So Bing is actually searching live, current internet information to provide you its answers. The other ones that will be integrated with things like Microsoft applications. They're using the data that they've got directly in front of them. Now, I don't have all the answers to exactly how all this works behind the scenes, but I know playing with the Bing search part where ChatGPT is integrated, it struck me that it is really going through the first page or two of results, and it's trying to summarize them to make it easier for me to understand. But I'm not sure if it's looking at a rich, deep set of data like ChatGPT does for some of its more elaborate answers. So the strength and weakness of that is what I see in Bing is only going to be as good as what is really optimized to show up in search currently, right? But still, it's very, very useful. I've been using it a lot. So here's some other examples of this. GitHub Copilot. If you're not familiar with GitHub, I'm not even sure if I know how to define that for you, but basically it's a website run by Microsoft where you can share code and manage code and that kind of stuff. So you can create kind of open source code. Now, GitHub Copilot is a AI-based generative content platform for automatically creating your code for you. So I have an application that's free from Microsoft called Visual Code, I think it is. Downloaded it, put it on my desktop, and said, give me the 60-day free trial of GitHub Copilot. I went into it. I created a new JavaScript file, and I hit / return the sentiment of a comment field in Dynamics 365. As soon as I did that, it suggested the next line to me, which I accepted, and the next line to me, which I accepted, and then I started typing function, which you can see I typed myself, and then it suggested all of this to me automatically without me typing any code whatsoever. So it looked at just my comments and said, it looks like this is the kind of code you're trying to build. Let me suggest some code to you that might work for what you're trying to do. So built directly into my coding experience there. I could also go into ChatGPT. You can see I asked for the code here. It also gave me some code here. And then I asked Bing the same kind of query, return the sentiment, and it kind of gave me some links to some different ways I could do it. Now, the interesting thing here is this gave me one type of code. It knew I was looking for JavaScript. This gave me another type of code. This gave me a totally different approach where it said, hey, look, you don't have to do this with code. You can use AI Builder. You can use Power Automate and that kind of stuff. So depending on who you ask, you might get a slightly different answer. Now, Microsoft announced maybe 1 to 2 weeks ago, I can't remember exactly when, what they're calling Dynamics 365 Copilot. So this is something that's going to integrate with their entire Dynamics 365 platform. So for salespeople, it'll help write emails, it'll summarize meetings, it'll include CRM data for those meeting summaries, such as, hey, here's your last quote or whatever might be in CRM. In marketing, you'll be able to do natural language segment queries. And in fact, I know one of our team is already experimenting with that with a client because they posted something in our teams just the other day about it. You can also generate new email ideas. So think about as a marketer, instead of going to a blank page or maybe having to pick out a template, you can immediately have it start throwing text ideas and throwing image ideas out at you based on what you've done before and what it can generate for you to help you complete your campaigns more quickly. Customer Insights is a platform that's essentially a data warehouse platform that can bring 360-degree customer data together from multiple different applications, put really interesting segment definitions together, and give you a lot of great analytics for talking to customers at the point of sale or targeting marketing campaigns and that kind of thing. Again, natural language targeting there, proactive segment recommendations. Hey, I see something going on in your data that you may not even know about. You may want to think about this. Customer service, they'll begin to see real-time suggested answers during the course of chatting with customers, even if it's voice chat, because the transcription is actually catching that. and suggesting things right there, or the rep can actually chat with the AI to get answers faster than if they search the knowledge base themselves. Power Virtual Agents, that's Microsoft's chatbots, basically. Those you'll be able to build much, much faster. You'll even be able to potentially point them to a database and say, create the chatbot with this, and it will be able to create those conversation boosters that will very quickly deploy a chatbot. Old world chatbots, it's very rules-based, pretty rigid. New world chatbots, hey, here's a body of knowledge that I want someone to be able to ask you about. Go build yourself around that body of knowledge. Business Central is an accounting platform. You'll be able to better create online product descriptions. So when you're building your product catalog and you need to get those published online, it'll help you automatically build those out, because you might have thousands of products with hundreds of variations each. You got to do a description for each. This can take care of that for you. So let me play you, we're doing good on time. Let me play you a super quick Microsoft video on this Dynamics 365 Copilot functionality, just to give you a better sense of what the possibilities are. Oops. And I did not share my speaker. Let me do that real quick. Well, I may not be able to show this to you after all. Let me stop sharing and start again just to see. I'd like you to see this. There we go. Oh, okay, never mind. I'm going to not share that because my settings don't let me share sound right now. So you can go watch that on your own. But basically, that's a super brief, just over a minute video that kind of walks through the big picture of how these things work. I wish I could share it with you now. It's very exciting, but cool stuff. Take a look when you can. I'll get the slides to Andy after this. So if you want to have the link to go see those things, these links will be hot. You got to go click the links to find them. So there's also Azure OpenAI, and I put SharePoint and Teams in here when I was building this deck this past weekend, so less than a week ago. But as Andy mentioned, there's already been some announcements about that. But what was already in existence before that? Teams Premium subscription. You could have intelligent meeting recap in there. So as you do a meeting, it can actually give you the bullet points summarizing the highlights of the meeting. So if you didn't take notes or you missed something in your notes and you don't want to watch the whole video or read a huge transcript, this helps find the highlight for you. It can also put chapters in your meetings, so you can page through your meeting video in a more meaningful way, hitting the high points of the outline. Azure OpenAI has what's called the ChatGPT Playground available in it if you're a developer right now. That's by application only, so you can go submit the application, and then after some period of time, you'll probably get in and be able to play around with that. And then as Andy mentioned, announced just today, thank you, Andy, for this. I didn't even know this and just threw the slide in here real quick for everybody, Microsoft 365 Copilot. So that brings it into the whole desktop experience. So as you're developing any kind of document, it's going to help you, whether it's analytics for Excel or letter writing for Word or slide design for PowerPoint. All of those will be in there. There'll also be Teams capabilities in there, probably deeper versions of what I just mentioned on the last slide. And there'll even be another application, I'm forgetting what they called it, but essentially you'll be able to go to a ChatGPT type of interface and ask it for information like, can you summarize my day? Can you tell me everything we know about blank? And it will start giving this information back to you. I don't have any information on how deep that runs, but I've assumed for a while now that this is eventually going to be able to consume all the knowledge you've got in Teams, all the knowledge you've got in SharePoint, all the knowledge you've got in Viva, Engage, or Yammer, maybe knowledge you have in other databases like ERP and CRM, and you'll be able to just interact with it in a human language format to pull answers out of that data. Okay, so I'm about to pause here and ask you guys your thoughts on this. I have my own, but I want to think about, okay, so what could go wrong, right? This is all great. This is very exciting. I love new technology as much as anybody, maybe more than most people do, but what could possibly go wrong with this? So I want to, again, throw it open for comment, either in chat or if you'd like to kind of raise your hand and be identified in there. I'm actually trying to bring my chat up here, sorry. There we go. If you would like to put anything in your chat, if you would like to raise your hand and be identified, but share either what you're already experiencing is going wrong, some of the downsides already, or what you think might go wrong in the future. I see one, status quo with biases, which is a great point. So I'm going to interpret, Benjamin, what I think you're saying there, but that is all of this is built on data, right? It's not really built necessarily on science. It's built on this idea of here is the data. And there's huge content farms out there that are generating data mostly just to get SEO hits so they can sell things. That automatically creates some bias in the model, right? And the more data there is, the more bias that might create. So how do we get more accurate? How do we get more scientific? Great, great observation, Benjamin. I think I see Andy's hand up. Andy?
I'll just chime in with a couple of small things here. And this is a message that's been resonating a lot with Microsoft over the last few weeks, but also with OpenAI. This technology is very much in its infancy. It's maturing very rapidly, but it's also a new technology, and they're exercising caution. It's a great starting point, but you can't take everything at face value. It's going to make mistakes, provide feedback along the way, but review the content that's actually coming in, and don't take everything at face value because it gets things wrong. It's a language model, or a lot of this is based off of like a language model. It's an amazing technology, and I put this in the chat, but businesses and processes are run by people. These tools give us a great starting point. They can help us to generate inspiration, to brainstorm. You gave a number of examples around that. They're great for things like debugging and troubleshooting and pointing out things that you might have missed. But as a user, you need to go back and review those results, and don't just take it at face value because it does get things wrong. It does hallucinate. That is a thing that happens with this tool. So any output that you get with it, make sure it aligns with your business values, because it's like a toddler and it says some interesting things every now and then, and you're not necessarily sure that's the thing that you're looking for.
Yeah, great point. Never just cut and paste, right? It needs human intervention in it. The way someone put it to me was, this thing can sound, and this thing is not just ChatGPT, right? There's a category called generative AI. ChatGPT is a member of that, and it can sound very confident in its answer, but it doesn't even know if it's right or wrong. It's just giving you the best answer it thinks exists based on the data plugged into it, and so it can sound very confident and be wrong. So the way this person put it to me was, that probably means it could win an elected office, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't fact check it as you're working with it. So keep that in mind with it. Great thought. Thank you, Andy. And Linus, I see your hand up. I think I can unmute you. Let me try. Well, try to unmute yourself, Linus, if you can. I don't have the power to do that. There you go. Yeah, I hear you.
So my thoughts is pretty much along the lines of what we have been talking about here, but also there are companies and individuals behind all of these, and they do impose their own rules of what they consider to be appropriate. And if we were to think that in the future we would get into a stage where a lot of people are using generative AIs for a lot of questions, they will be limited most likely to the viewpoints of whoever created them. And the more we use them and the more we trust them, the harder it's going to be to get a viewpoint that isn't aligned with whoever created the AI across.
Great point, Linus. I'm not sure if we just lost you. It sounded like you got cut off a little bit there, but yeah, great point. Although it's trying to be trained on open data, it is still biased by humans who program their own algorithms into it. And some of that's clearly good, right? We don't want the AI to be doing certain things. We don't want it to be saying things about people and distasteful things and stuff like that. But on the other hand, there might be areas where there are two reasonable opinions. And if you go ask the AI two different sides of the same question, it might not give you an unbiased answer to those questions. And if you doubt that, I would say go in and, pick out something that you have an opinion on and ask it to defend your position, ask it to defend the competing position, and see the answer that you get. So like everything else, there are humans behind this, and they're building their own biases into it. And we need to know that and decide how we're going to handle that. Great. And I've not been watching chat because I've been looking at people's hands. Let's see, anything new in chat? It's hard to check or validate the answer without subject matter expertise. You're exactly right. I mean, if you go, when I've gone in here and said, I want to write an article on something, if I just have a simple 1-sentence prompt, oftentimes I don't really get what I want. Sometimes I get some views that are competing with mine, or sometimes it just doesn't have the same things in the article that I think should be prioritized. So you don't want to say something like, I'm going to go turn in a term paper on a subject I know nothing about by having this write the paper for me. That's obviously a misuse of it, and it's cheating and all of that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, as someone who's writing blogs a lot, I have it help me write a lot of blogs that help me get my expertise out there much more efficiently than I otherwise would. So obviously cheating is, people using this to cheat on things is a potential issue in the future. Another issue that a lot of people bring up is, what about the intellectual property of other people, right? I mean, it's creating pictures. How's it creating pictures like the one you see in the background here? Well, basically, it slurped in millions of pictures, and it says, hey, based on your prompt, here's a picture that's unique that I think you want. But it's using someone else's creativity to do that. How's it answering questions that I want to get answers to? Well, it's probably slurping information from things like my own blog. And now suddenly people are getting their answers from ChatGPT, and I'm not able to position myself as an expert anymore because they have no idea that the information came from me. Now, Bing works a little differently than ChatGPT does with those things. So a lot of those things are things that people are concerned about, rightly so. Now, I'm always an optimist, right? So I kind of think, humanity has a pretty good track record of taking new innovations and, yes, messing up for a while, or maybe greedy or power hungry people abuse them for a while, but ultimately they work them out, right? I like this image that I built here with Midjourney, this idea of, whether it's fire, right? I mean, fire has potential for huge damage, right? And even today, although we're pretty good at controlling fire, every now and then we have a fire that, destroys a home or destroys something important to us. But by and large, we've harnessed the power of fire for good. And if you don't know anything about sort of human evolution and innovation, fire was one of the most innovative things that accelerated human development in all of history, because before then, we were hunters and gatherers. We had to gather all of our food, and we had to consume it when we gathered it, or it would spoil. And it wasn't cooked, so A, was more likely to hurt us, and B, our digestive system had to work so hard on digesting it that we couldn't create enough energy to feed our brain and to free us to have more time available to do things like develop. Fire changed all of that. We could cook food, we could store it longer, our bodies didn't have to work as hard to digest it, and suddenly we were unleashed to accelerate who we became as a species, much more so than we ever had been before that. Fire did that for us. And of course, take that all the way up to nuclear energy and the unbelievable potential for bad that nuclear energy has, but also the unbelievable potential to bring power to masses of people that might have been unaffordable before, the ultimate good of nuclear energy. So I'm a big believer that, yes, we're going to make some mistakes. Some bad actors are going to do things intentionally bad with new technology, but at the end of the day, we're going to do a lot of good. So here's my kind of message on this is, as I kind of digest all this, and I do a lot of speaking on things ranging from technology, things like this, to business leadership sessions I've done with several different Native American groups, actually, and it's a ton of fun. But what I've seen through research and through interacting with people is, as human beings, we are made to do two things. We need two things, and there's a science behind this. The first one is relationships. There's a Harvard study that, if you haven't found it, go look for it. But there's a Harvard study that's been going on for 85 years. Every year they go back to the same group of people that they interviewed as very young people and keep talking about the quality of life and how long they're living and how happy they are. And what keeps coming out of that is our relationships with our family, our friends, our communities, has more to do with our health and happiness than any other factor. You would literally be better off with a lot of friends and smoking a carton of cigarettes every week than if you were all alone and not smoking at all, right? That's how important that is. Relationships are number one. The other one is these two, climbing the mountain, right? Challenges. We were built for challenge. We were built to climb that next mountain. And those are both good, right? Relationships and challenge. These people are climbing the mountain together. They're in a relationship, facing the challenge together. We're made to do that as humans. All of these innovations we've had throughout history, and this one's no exception, but perhaps takes it to a new level. It means we don't have to choose to do those things as much as we used to have to, right? Millennia ago, if you weren't in good relationships, if you didn't have a community, you were at risk. Millennia ago, if you weren't facing the challenges of chasing off predators, you were at risk. Now you don't have to do that. So more and more, it's up to you as the individual to choose to be in relationship with other human beings and choose to continually challenge yourself to grow and build your muscle, right? And what I mean by that is, sure, physical muscle is one of those, but what about your mental muscle? What about your soul muscle? What about every part of you that needs to be strengthened as a human being? That builds and grows through challenge. And you can choose not to be challenged, or you can choose to be challenged, because when you use these tools to think less, to challenge yourself less, to not need people as much, then you're going to ultimately atrophy. So, not saying don't use them. I don't think that the tools are evil. I think what they do is they unleash us to build relationships and chase challenges in new ways that were never available to us before. That's exciting. But as humans now, it's more on us to choose to do that. So my challenge to you guys, I always like to have one of these to help everybody think. You all have come here. You're probably folks who are up for a challenge because you're coming to a meeting like this over lunch on a weekday. You're wanting to learn, right? You're wanting to challenge at least a part of yourself, and you're part of a community that's coming to something like this. But how do you not only do this for yourself, but how do we help educate and inspire the people around us to take up the mantle of deeper, more meaningful relationships with other human beings and a sense of ongoing challenge so we never stop growing as human beings? Okay, so another thing I'm going to open up the mic for here. I'll start with one topic and then we'll come back and do another one, or we'll open up the mic in just a second after that. So now that we've talked about all this, it's hard to get our heads around this, right? For me, I remember I was, I'm probably on the higher end of age range of people coming to this. And I remember when the internet first came out, I was like, hey, this is cool. And I play around, and I get lost in the web somewhere and wonder how I got there and all that kind of stuff. But I had no idea how it would fundamentally change so many things about business and how I'm living, right? The same thing kind of happened with mobile phones over time. The personal computer did that kind of stuff too. Now we've got this. So I want us to imagine together, what might this do, right? Not just in the near term, but even further out. Like, what are the good things we might be able to expect from this? So as you're kind of churning about that before I open up the mic, let me throw one other thing out here. It was mentioned ChatGPT just announced ChatGPT 4 is now available. That was released earlier this week. So partners like Microsoft had earlier access. So the Bing search you saw, the chat in Bing, that was already using ChatGPT 4, the algorithm. The data in ChatGPT 4, still the 2021 data. They haven't updated the backend database. They've just updated the front-end algorithm. So what's different? First of all, right now you have to pay to get access to ChatGPT 4. That's a $20 a month payment. I've paid to join, and I'm seeing some of the rewards of that. You can get much longer replies. So where my code was getting cut off before, I can now get my full reply. Your answers tend to be more accurate. They tend to be more creative, and there's better reasoning and even context. So you can solve really complex word problems, for example, if you plug them in there. If it takes tests, they actually submit it to take tests like the bar exam and certain biology exams. It gets higher marks in those. And it can even learn your writing style, and it can mimic your writing style for you. It has the capability for visual input. So literally seen a demo video where someone took a drawing of a website and they loaded it into ChatGPT and said, can you give me the HTML for this website? It created the whole website for them, including the HTML for a button on a page and a pop-up that's behind that button, all just by analyzing what was put in there. It is slower, and you're not allowed to do as many queries at the moment. I actually used ChatGPT 4 at the very beginning of the session to kind of generate that little response. And you can kind of see it really chugging along, thinking as it did it. So those two little images over there on the right-hand side, those are from OpenAI, kind of the very high-level summary of ChatGPT 3.5 could do these things. ChatGPT 4 can do these things. So it's cool. It's evolving fast. I have a feeling we're just kind of getting into what 4 can do, and we're going to learn a lot about that soon too. So let me now offer for people to raise their hands. I see some awesome comments coming in here too. It would be really useful in collegiate or high school learning. Instead of a TA checking your work, the AI could provide feedback. Yeah, that's very cool. Interactive learning and real-time feedback. I think Yeah, Khan Academy. See someone mentioning that, and I think the OpenAI press release even talked about how it's being integrated into learning platforms like that. So students who are doing learning can have a contextually relevant conversation with an AI teacher versus no teacher at all, or a teacher who's so overburdened that it takes them a long time to respond to them. And these are things that are kind of already popping out right now. Any others that anybody wants to mention, either raise your hand or put into chat, anything you can kind of dream about for what this might look like in the future? Prototyping new solutions. Sure, that's a great one. I know one thing I think about, and this may not be very far in the future, it might already be part of what Microsoft's doing with the Outlook integration, but I'd mentioned this idea of, sometimes we send that message and we're like, ooh, I didn't word that well, or maybe it was a moment of passion and I said something that was hurtful and I didn't want to do that. Well, now there can be a little brakes put on that, right? You're about to hit send on that email and all of a sudden something pops up and says, are you sure you want to say this way? Do you want me to offer you some other ways to help you communicate this? I have an F-150 Lightning. I want to design a mini kitchen for the front. Okay, so I'm not quite sure what that means, but okay. Personal assistant, aka my own Jarvis. Midjourney to mock up a few ideas. Absolutely. People are writing books with this already. I've written books in the past, and I've been putting off writing another one because it's so time consuming. Now I can take my ideas and put that out there a little bit faster. But that's the now, right? I don't have to wait for that. I can do that at the moment. Midjourney to mock up some ideas, yeah, and there's lots of them. So let me go on. I actually put these things in here thinking, hey, these things might be coming soon. That was Sunday. Today, they're already happening. It was announced earlier today. So it's moving pretty fast, you guys. Okay, so some things you can do next to start to use this if you're not using it already. I know some people are very engaged here and have mentioned things. Maybe others are here because you're curious and you've seen a lot, but what do I do? How do I begin to kind of start to play around with this thing? The good news is it's super, super easy and you don't have to spend any money to start playing around with it, at least so far. So the first thing I'd suggest you do is go to openai.com. All right, that's the company that created ChatGPT and another, the image generation technology called DALL-E, and they're doing some other things as well. Microsoft made a huge investment into them a number of years ago, and now they're doubling down on that investment to get even more functionality out of what they're doing with them. Go to openai.com. You can go over to the ChatGPT area. You can go to the DALL-E area, set up a free account, and start playing. There are limits on the free accounts, so if you go to ChatGPT and go, well, it's not available, I can't play. If you're on the East Coast of the United States, what I can tell you is the earlier you go there, the more you're going to get interactive with that, because the more people that get online, the more it slows down. If you want to pay $20 a month, you can do that. And it is always available and more responsive to you if you do that. DALL-E, I think it gives you 25 or 30 images, and then you either have to wait for another month to expire before you get more available, or you pay a little bit of a fee to get some extra images created. But you can get online and play with them right away for free. If you do a web search for Midjourney, I use Midjourney for a lot of my images today because Midjourney, to me, does a better job of creating these much more lifelike images like this clover you see right here and people images and stuff like that. Midjourney also has a number of images you can generate free, then it starts charging you. Bing. So if you go to Bing search right now, you'll see the usual tabs at the top for, is it search everything? Is it search photos? Is it search whatever? There'll be another one up there that says chat. Click it. If you've not gotten approved yet, you'll see a little form saying, I want to be approved for the pre-release of chat in Bing. Fill out your information. I did that on both a personal and company account. Within about a week, I had access to it, totally free. GitHub, go get the 60-day free trial of GitHub Copilot. The one downside of that for me is I'm not a coder. I don't typically have coding stuff installed on my computer. When I first went to do it, I was like, oh, okay, I got to have like Visual Studio or Visual Code on my computer. I don't know what that is, so I walked away from it for a while. If that's you, that might be a big lift for you. But you can get Visual Code for free. It's a free download from Microsoft. You can go turn on the GitHub Copilot, and you can go do / type of description and see it start to build code right before your eyes. There's a link to go get Copilot for, there's a link to Microsoft 365 Copilot information. So that's what Andy talked about up front, and I said announcement just came out today. If you want to look at other generative AIs, there's 2 more links for you at the bottom of the screen. One is from Forbes. I got that about a week ago. Talks about a bunch of AI tools. And then this other one is from Medium, and someone was talking about how I'm making money using AI. That's not really the interesting thing to me, but I went through that and saw there's some more AI applications in there as well. So tons and tons of stuff you can do. But if this is overwhelming for you, what I would say is go to OpenAI, go to try out ChatGPT, and just start asking it some questions, right? Paste some things in there, fix this for me, improve this for me, answer this question for me, and it'll start to help you answer some of those things. What was the other AI image site you mentioned? Midjourney and DALL-E are the 2 image sites I used to create these slides. There might have been some others in here, I can't remember, but those are the main 2 I've used so far. By the way, what I find is the AI image generators are not so good at the details of human faces and the details, right? So the digits like fingers, right? So Midjourney does a little bit better of a job, but even then, there's some scary things that come out when I ask it for pictures of people. I haven't found one that seems to have gotten all of that right now. So you have to interact with it a little bit longer to get those. As you start playing with these, here are some formulas that I've been using. And the funny thing is, I've actually noticed there's like this whole new category of blog now where it's like how to frame up your questions correctly for generative AI to generate the best response, right? So I'm not sure if that will last long or not, but here's what I found. First of all, refining your requirements, right? So I went in for some coding things, and I'm not a coder, but I said, I want to do code for this, and it generates a bunch of code, but then it tells me what it's doing in the code. So for example, I did something a couple of weeks ago where I thought, it'd be really cool as a dynamic CRM person, like if someone emails me their contact info in their email, I'd like to just copy that and do Control-C, highlight it, Control-C, and then I'd like to go over to my browser and click a button, and it automatically fills in the Dynamics lead form for me with that information. So I just decided, let me see if ChatGPT can do this. And as it did it, I started going through a bunch of iterations, realizing, hey, I don't have the requirements really well defined here. It kind of said I'm going to do this, and I realized, well, wait a minute, you haven't asked me to verify beforehand, right? Or I don't even know if I'm on the lead form. Did you error check that for me? So I kind of kept adding those requirements to it, and it kind of kept spitting out new stuff. And even if I don't use it to do that, I now have a much better defined set of requirements, so I can hand those off to a technical architect, a developer, to say, here's exactly what I need, right? Because we've all had that situation where you've said, here's what I need. Someone comes back and gives you something, and you're like, well, this is actually what I asked for, but it's actually not what I need, right? So this helps me define what I need. Asking a question, right? We did a lot of that today. So how do I turn off Outlook group with PowerShell? Give me 10 title options for a webinar on ChatGPT. Maybe that's where I got this one. QA my code for me, fact check things for me. Using the outline approach is how I go for a lot of sort of blogs or session descriptions where I'll say, okay, here's a topic, here's the bullet points I want to cover. Hey, ChatGPT, turn this outline into a full description for me. Now, it never ends there for me. So usually I'll kind of do something and I'll look at it, like I might copy and paste it and refine the paragraphs myself. Or I might look at it and say, hey, ChatGPT, that second paragraph, I want you to also talk about this point. It updates that for me as well. No matter what you do, final human editing and fact checking before you go live with it. Literally, by the way, I used it this morning to generate a session description for an organization that asked me to do a half day on Microsoft Teams, and kind of a full session for beginners to intermediate people on lots of different functionality in Microsoft Teams. Again, it might have taken me a lot longer to create otherwise. Improve your first draft. So maybe you do the entire first draft of the text on your own, but then you give it to ChatGPT, and you can say stuff like, hey, remove needless words from this, because as humans, we write the way we speak, and we speak with extra words that might help us to, cover a topic, fill some blank space, that kind of thing. But in writing, that can be really unclear or laborious to go through. It's a perfect thing. Hey, ChatGPT, clean this up for me. Make it make a little more sense. Explain a little bit better. Add some excitement to it. Whatever you want to do, it can help you do those things. And I'm saying, hey, ChatGPT, I pay also for a Jasper membership, and I use it regularly too. Not played with any kind of coding in Jasper, but it's not really meant for that. But it's a little better in my experience in ChatGPT for some of the communications type of generation. brainstorming kickstart. There's nothing worse than having a blank sheet of paper, right? Being like, what am I going to do? But give me 5 important points about OneDrive for file management. Maybe I need to write a little article on it or something like that. Maybe I'm just looking for a new topic. Hey, give me 5 topics that people are interested in related to Microsoft Teams. It's probably going to throw something out there. Now, ChatGPT might be a little outdated. You might want to use Bing to do some of that type of work for you, or Jasper you might use to do some of that work for you. ChatGPT helped me to be more mindful of accessibility and inclusion. Awesome. That's great. I mean, these are all great things, right? A way to kind of help look at stuff differently. Jennifer, I can't read yours right now, and I won't try to zoom into that, but thank you for sharing that. A one-stop shop for Microsoft 365 Copilot announcements and resources. Thanks, Andy. So if you're interested in kind of keeping up to date with all these announcements as they're coming out, go check those out as well. And I see tons of other links in here. So if you're not following chat before we're done, go open that chat up and take a look. There's a lot of great resources people are sharing in there. Thank you all for doing that. That's what I was hoping would happen today. A few other things to think about. It's an assistant, not a replacement. I'm putting for now, right? I know a lot of people are saying, oh, don't worry, it's your Copilot. It's never going to replace humans. Look, let's face it. In some things, this is going to replace what we do as humans in some capacities, right? I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think a worse thing is fooling ourselves into thinking it's not going to do something we need to expect. But at the moment, you definitely need to expect it to be an assistant and not a replacement, right? You need to never think, I can just tell this what to do and to do it across any kind of context whatsoever. But it will probably get very good at some things. I've heard some lawyers say, I asked this to create a contract for me, and it created a contract at least as good as I would have created myself, putting a lot of time into it. So there will be areas like that things like this start to replace humans, unleashing us humans to be better versions of ourselves, not just eliminating what we do. As we said, the answers are not always correct. They can be based on old information. Sometimes it is just a question, but for me, more often it's a conversation. I got to go back and forth with it multiple times, clarifying. The cool thing to me about that is, as I said before, sometimes I realize I'm not asking the question and I'm not putting the way in the terms I should have. And it actually makes me better at defining it. So it's improving the quality of what I'm doing by looking at how it's responding back to me. And then when I have to communicate to someone else, I've got more information. By the way, we also tested this with writing user stories. Really cool for doing that. Now, obviously, you don't say write user stories. You've got to have collected most of the information, but it can take all that information and start formatting it for you. The writing quality does vary widely. I've kind of had the Mad Libs effect a few times. I wrote some songs with it and stuff like that. And the first few times I was like, wow, cool, this is amazing. And then after 2 more times, I was kind of like, yeah, this feels a lot like the other one, right? They just kind of substituted some words a little bit. You can kind of tell this is kind of an AI doing some things consistently. So the human effect can really enrich what's coming out of it. The more specific, opinionated, unusual, or recent the topic or code, the more work that's going to be left to you as a human. I think that's really cool, right? The things, what makes us different? We're innovators, we're creative, we're thinking of new challenges, those kinds of things. We're the ones who are going to help create the knowledge. This is going to consume it and make it easier for everyone else to get access to it. So, concluding statement here for me overall, just remember, it's about making technology work for people, not the other way around, right? So I don't think we're ever going to be working for this technology, but I think we as humans have choices to make sure that doesn't wind up where we as individuals end up with this, right? This can serve us incredibly well. I'm not worried about job losses, not in the long term, because again, every single innovation that humans have come up with, there's been potential to disrupt jobs, right? When we went to an agrarian society and we got super efficient at farming, we should have said, oh my gosh, all these people who have been hunters-gatherers are out of work now. What are they going to do? Well, instead, that opened up a whole new way for humans to interact with each other, with the environment around them, and to do things that were valuable for themselves and other human beings. This is going to do the same thing. We just need to watch for those things and be mindful of, stay challenged, stay in good relationships with each other, be good humans to other human beings, and this is going to help us be better humans to other human beings. Okay. I realize some of that was my own little bit of heresy right there, maybe, but hopefully the opinions are my own only, but hopefully they're taken in a positive way that you can take back and do something with. We're close to time, but we've got a few minutes, so I'd love to have. I don't even know if it's questions, because I mean, look, I've been doing this for 2 months. It's not like I'm a deep expert in it or anything like that, but maybe conversation. Does anybody have anything they'd like to throw out as a question that maybe we can discuss as a group? All right, Andy, I'm going to turn it back over to you then. I'm not hearing questions. I'm not seeing anything in chat, but thank you everybody for having me today. This was a lot of fun to prepare for, a lot of fun to deliver. And it's my hope that no matter where you are on this generative AI journey, you got at least a few nuggets that you can work with.
Geoff, thank you. That was really insightful. A lot of really good points to take away from that. And for something that's only been around for a couple of months, you've clearly put in a lot of thought and put the time in to actually learn this technology. I'm kind of following along in a lot of the same paths that you are in getting hands-on with it, kind of learning the ins and outs of it, learning where I can apply it. I think the thing you did with Ali was brilliant. And I'll be honest, I've had that same thought myself for a couple of things, but having Ali, as you were talking about that, like the light bulb went off because I've seen Ali in my inbox with some of the C5 communications coming through, and I never put it together that it was not an actual person driving that behind the scenes. So that was actually a really brilliant thing, and now I'm seeing it in a whole new light. So go back and look at a couple of those communications and see if I can kind of pick out where it was GPT generated and where the human touch came into play. But that was really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Glad to be here, and thank you for saying that, Andy. This is always a fun group. This is my hometown. I know people from all over the world in this hometown, but this is the Charlotte meeting, so it's always a pleasure and fun to be asked to address this group. And also a group where so many of you probably could have presented the same thing and maybe a much better version of it. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
No, really appreciate the insight and the thought that you put into it. As you mentioned, the PowerPoint, just forward that to me and I'll make sure anybody who needs a copy of it gets it, and the links. For those of you that were here today, I tried to follow along with Geoff and give you a lot of the links in the chat window. I do encourage you to check out all the links, but there's one toward the end of the chat. It's one-stop shop for Microsoft 365 Copilot. That's the new one from today. Microsoft put all the resources in one page. That one's really, really good because you get the keynote video, you get all the individual product video demos that they provided. They even did some downloads of like high definition screenshots of some of this in action. They linked to all the various blog posts that apply to it as well. So that one's a really great resource to check out for what they just introduced today, which we're still learning about because the announcement's only 2.5 hours old. And so we haven't had a chance to get hands-on with it. But for some of the other things that Geoff mentioned, I tried to keep those up to date in the chat window as they were going out. But we'll make the resources available in our meetup group. That's the main place. And then if you have questions, go back to this event in Meetup. Ask questions there. The organizers of the Charlotte area SharePoint user group, we do keep track of the conversations and things that are happening there. So we do encourage you to check that out. Last couple of things as we wrap up, I do want to thank Geoff for being here and providing this content and this discussion. This was great. This recording will be made available on our YouTube channel. I gave the link to that earlier, so check us out on YouTube, Kasich YT on YouTube.com. Leave a like and maybe subscribe so you can see next month's video or any of the other videos that we've done over time. And then lastly, shameless plug. One of the apps that we mentioned today in passing, Microsoft Loop, was also part of the announcement today for some of the Copilot stuff. Well, I just happen to be presenting a deep dive session on YouTube next Friday, along with Microsoft MVP John Moore and Microsoft MVP and Loop expert Daryl Webster on Microsoft Loop. So if you want to learn more about Loop and real-time collaboration, join us on YouTube for 365 deep dive on Microsoft Loop, and I'll leave a link to that in Meetup and in the chat window. But outside of that, I want to thank you all for being here. Geoff, thanks so much for an amazing presentation. Anybody has any questions, stick around. But otherwise, we will see you in the next one. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks again. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.